Some people call these the theories of parallel universes. Now, it sounds a little abstract, it sounds a little esoteric, and it becomes important, and I'll share with you why I believe this is so key. Because scientists also believe now, research within just the last 4 or 5 years has demonstrated that the choices we make in our lives, day in and day out, what we feel are the insignificant choices, how we respond to the wait person that brings our food to us at lunch, and how we address one another day in and day out in our lives. Those little insignificant experiences, that's us demonstrating our mastery each day in life, individually. Collectively, our mastery determines which reality we tune to, just like a television station. So what I believe has happened is that in these ancient traditions, as brilliant, masterful prophets and seers looked from their time ahead and even beyond our time, and they saw these possibilities of destruction, they were looking through the corridor that was aligned with human mastery on a global level at that point in history. And it's a very real possibility. And what we also know now is that the seers saw other possibilities that are much more beautiful and transcend the destruction and the loss of life. They offer a great ray of hope and possibility, and those visions were taken out of our text 1,700 years ago. 1,700 years ago, we began losing the possibilities of joy, and we were only reminded of the possibilities of destruction for this time in history. And I think most people pretty much agree as we have the opportunity to travel this country, United States, and also my wife and I travel throughout the world. And we ask people, how do you feel about this time in history, and what do you expect to see happen? And there's a dichotomy, because on the one hand, many people feel very positive and they're excited about the possibilities of what this time means. And on the other hand, they say, our prophecies and our predictions say this is a time of great destruction. Well, what I'd like to share with you as we go into this work in more detail, some of the prophets, and some of them are ancient prophets, some of them are very recent prophets. Perhaps one of the oldest prophecies for this time in history is found in a very mystical book of our Western Bible. It's a book entitled Revelation. And as you'll see in just a few moments, the Revelation that we have today is essentially a Reader's Digest condensed version of a much broader Aramaic text that includes the messages of hope and possibility as well as the messages of doom and destruction. And you'll understand why the translation changed, why it was condensed. The prophet John is the author of the book of Revelation. And John shares through the Aramaic traditions that in a dream he asked to see what would become of the people of this world. And in a dream he was taken from his time ahead of our time and shown all the great possibilities of war machines and destruction. And he describes them with such detail that it's hard to imagine that he could have simply made them up in pre-biblical times, because they so accurately describe the war machines and the destruction that we've seen today. He was shown a book that had 7 chapters, 7 seals, and as he touched each chapter open before him, he witnessed the possibility where the people of this world, of this time, had turned their backs on the forces of nature, where we had turned our backs on what they call the angel of the air, the angel of the wind, the angel of the earth, where we had harnessed power and used it for destruction instead of production. And John was heartbroken when he saw this. He was in tears, and he fell to his knees before those who were showing him this. And he said, is this the only possibility? Is this all that we have to look forward to? John said, I would do anything. I'm only one man, and I would do anything to change this. And this is the way he describes. He says the angels of the world, and if you don't like the word angels, you can simply call them electromagnetic forces. Call them a formless consciousness that came and whisked John away into this scenario. The angels looked at him, and there was sadness as well as joy in their eyes. And they said, John, this is only one possibility, and all it takes is one man, one human, to choose life and to live that life fully. And this scenario will never come about. And John says, I'll do that. I'll be the one. I'll be the one to do that. And the angels looked and said to him, You who are at once the highest of the high, the lightest of the light, and the lowest of the low, and the darkest of the dark. You're both of those together. It's for you that heaven and earth were created so that you may know yourself and love on a level deeper than any angels have ever loved before. And John goes on to share a possibility that I'll describe in more detail that was taken from our text 1,700 years ago. So that's, when we talk about prophecies, that's one of the most ancient. A little more recent, there was a 16th century prophet many of us know today as Nostradamus. And one of the most amazing things about Nostradamus is that his texts have been continuously in print since the 16th century. They have never gone out of print. Over 300 years. Now, his books have been continuously in print. What a record for an author to be able to boast of. I mean, how great. Books have been around for 300 years. Nostradamus' prophecies are a little nebulous at best because he writes in terms of what are called quatrains. And they're very poetic. So there's been a lot of controversy about them. One of his best-known works is called The Centuries, because there are 100 quatrains describing the centuries. And what scholars do agree upon is when they've backed in the dates into the scenarios that he's talking about, 1988 appears to be the beginning for Nostradamus of a window in time that extends into our time, 1988, a window in time where we may expect to begin seeing these great cataclysmic changes in our world. More recently, a prophet of Edgar Cayce, I know many people are familiar with the works of Edgar Cayce, was known as the sleeping prophet because he would essentially go into a trance as he shared his information. And although he came about it from many different perspectives, some of Cayce's prophecies were so precise in their languaging. For example, he predicted that 1998 would be the beginning. It would open the window of a period of time where Earth would see such great change, geographic change, that we would never recognize our Earth again, as well as change within our bodies. He went so far as to predict a shift in the rotational axis of the Earth, as well as reversals of the polar magnetic field, 180-degree reversals of the magnetic field. Now, our scientists have gone back in the geologic record, and we know there's a precedent for this. Earth's magnetic fields have flipped 180 degrees. What used to be north became south, and what used to be south became north. Earth has seen that at least 14 times in the last 4.5 million years. We've seen that happen. We've never seen it happen with 6 billion or so people living on the planet. So we don't know precisely what that means to us. And even more recent prophets, such as Gordon Michael Scallion, some of you are familiar, I know, with his newsletters and his work and the maps of the world that he's created, describing what he sees. And I believe that Gordon Michael Scallion is a heartfelt being that is sharing to the best of his ability the visions that he's seeing in a given moment and doing his best in the only way that he knows how in that moment to share that with people so that they may prepare themselves, possibly averting some of these experiences. Gordon Michael Scallion sees great geophysical changes, the great inland sea that we saw during the Cretaceous period of Earth 300 million years ago, 350 million years ago. In his visions, he sees that once again as the Great Lakes are connected with the Gulf of Mexico. And it's interesting because the satellite photographs from the floods of 1993, when the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers were out of their banks for weeks on end, they appeared very similar to some of those old maps of Earth, as well as some of Gordon Michael Scallion's maps. And the seismic activity, global volcanic activity, and earthquake activity, all of these prophecies are pointing to a period of catastrophic change and destruction. My belief, and I'll share this with you, I am an optimist. It's important for me to say that. I see this window of time as a great window of hope and possibility rather than a window of doom and destruction. What I see and what I've witnessed, having researched many ancient texts, many ancient traditions, including our own Native American, almost universally, if we look closely, the predictions and the prophecies are very clear. They remind us that the